Be'ezras Hashem, today's daf is Masechta Avodah Zarah, Daf Samach, number 60. And we're going to start from 3 lines from the bottom of 59b. Yotes Amid Beis. Says the Gemara. Okay, you can see it on your screen here. Hahi Chavisa. There was this barrel. Okay, we're talking, the subject is Yayin Nesach. Now we know if a guy touches the wine of a Jew, let's assume if he just purposely touches the wine of a Jew with no other intention, then we say the wine is prohibited to benefit from. The Jew cannot even sell that wine anymore. It's got to throw it in the garbage. So here, ahi chavisa, there was this wine, the barrel belonging to Jew, a barrel of wine belonging to a Jew. The ishtikil labarza, the spigot fell off. So let's see how a spigot looks. Spigot looks like this, right? A spigot on the barrel of wine, and this fell off. Now the wine is leaking out. So what this goy came, and what he's going to do is plug the hole, as you can see in the picture over here. Hi, Lewis. We just began. We're discussing over here whether a spigot fell off a barrel of wine, as you can see in the picture, and a goy came and put his finger on the hole where the wine could potentially come out. So his finger is blocking the wine from coming out. Now, obviously, his intention is to save the wine. He's not really intending just to touch the wine and maybe pour it for his avodah zarah, do something for it. You see, if a guy touches the wine of a Jew and like moves it around for his avodah zarah, so that makes it asa barna. But here the guy came, the guy came, Idri, he jumped up, seeing the wine leaking out. Anach yade ilave. He put his finger by where the wine was coming out. So what's the din? Amar Rapapa said, Kol de lahavi barza, everything where the spigot was, the little wine that's by the spigot. By the spigot, where the hole comes out, there must be like a little wine. So then, chamra asa, that wine is asa to drink and it's not asa bahana. Because since, the guy is not sticking his hand in the wine and swirling it, he's just touching it. So if he's just touching it without swirling it, that's what Rashi says. So then the wine is also to drink, but not all the wine in the barrel is also to drink. That minuscule wine that's next to the spigot, that right there is also to drink and not to benefit from. Now we go to Amir Aleph. We go to Samach Amir Aleph. V'idach, and the rest of the wine in the barrel. All right. So then we say, Shari, that's mutter to even drink, even though it's connected to the wine that was by the spigot. This Rapapa is a strange opinion, who holds like another Tana, which we're going to learn, that holds that just because they're connected, it doesn't mean you can't divide it. So basically, you would be able to take out the wine from the top of the barrel, and when you get to the wine that's near the spigot, you should know that wine is also to drink. But the rest of the barrel is mutter to drink. That's what Rapapa said in the first version. The Ika the Amri and others say, Omer Rapapa said in the second version like this: Ada barza chamra aser, the idach shari. Up until the spigot, from the top of the barrel till the spigot, is also to drink. Again, it's also to drink that wine. It's mutter to benefit from the wine. You could sell it to a guy. The idach shari and the rest of the wine will be permitted. So let's see the picture. So where I have in the picture this guy who is now covering the spigot. So up from the top of the barrel of wine till where his finger is, that's going to be usser. All that wine will be usser, right? Till the top of his finger, I guess, is usser. I put it in red. But from the bottom of his finger and onwards, that's when the wine will be permitted. And Beidach Shari, and that's the second version of Rapapa. So it's a little bit more stricter. Because the answer is that because all that wine that was on top was expected to come out of the spigot. but the one that's below the spigot was not expected to come out of the spigot, so it's not really being touched by the goy. Either way, it's only usher to have benefit. It's usher to drink, but it's permitted to sell the whole barrel to a goy, pretty much. Amar Rav, you could sell the whole barrel to the goy. Amar Rav Yemer, Kitanoi. Rav Papa is of the opinion like Titanoim, that hold that you don't connect, you can separate wine in a barrel. The Baraisa says, Chavius, let's say a barrel of truma wine, okay? Shenikva, it got a hole. Bein mipia, whether the hole in the barrel is on the top. Bein mishuleha, whether the hole of the barrel is on the bottom. And bein mitzida, whether the hole of the barrel is on the side. So you have this hole in a barrel of wine, and it's the wine is truma. V'noga by tvul yoim, and a person who's a sheni, a human being who's a sheni. How's a human being a sheni? He went to the mikvah, and he didn't have the sun set on him, so he tvul yoim. He went to the mikvah that day, but the sun did not set, so he is a sheni. If he would touch the truma, it would make it a shlishi. So the Brisa says the Tanakama holds all the wine in that barrel is tameya, is tame. So obviously, Rab Papa is not like this Tana of the Mishnah, and East Tana Mishnah holds even if the hole was on top, since since all the wine, that's underneath it is like a support for the wine on the top, so it's connected to his finger, and therefore all the wine in the barrel is tamei. Rabbi Yehuda says, I agree. Mipia, if the hole's on top, Umishula, and the hole's on the bottom, and the Tvil Yoim puts his finger there, then Tameya. Then the whole barrel of wine is Tamei, and the Kohen cannot drink that wine. Mitzidel, but if it's on the side, like we had in the picture, Tahira, it's Mikan Ubekan, it's Tahira from all sides, because there's no connection from wine on the side to the rest of the barrel. And basically that's what we're saying over here, that Rav Papa could basically say, let's say in the first version, that only the little wine that's by his finger is tamei, is non-drinkable, and the rest of the wine in the barrel is permitted to even drink. That's the first version of Rav Papa. And he will align himself, Rabbi Yehuda, and also the second version. Now the Gemara gives you another halacha. Amar Rav Papa said, Goy Adana, a goy is holding the barrel of wine. Okay? A goy is picking up a barrel of wine and pouring it. The Yisrael akuva. And Yisrael, the Jewish person, is holding the cup. Now the goy obviously is not touching the wine in the barrel. And what's the din with the Jew? He just got his cup filled up with wine. Now, obviously, the barrel of wine is Jewish wine. So we're not talking about goyish wine. But the goy lifted the barrel and poured it into the beaker of the Jew, holding up a cup. So chamra aser, the chamra is aser bahanoah, right? The wine is aser bahanoah. My tama, because it's like the goy touched the wine, but didn't stir the wine. But ki ka'asi mikoyach goy ka'asi, it's coming from the force of the goy. He's pouring the wine. And we're talking about a case he didn't touch the wine, because if he touched the wine, then it would become aser bahanoah, and he didn't stir. So basically, it's his force that caused the wine to go into the Jew's cup. So the Jew cannot drink that wine, but he could sell it for a non-Jew. Yisrael Adana, but let's say the Jew picks up the barrel of wine. Again, it's kosher wine. The goy akuva, and the goy is holding the cup, and the goy is not touching the wine in the cup. He's just holding the cup out. Then chamra shari, then the wine is permitted, because provided that the goy doesn't touch the wine that's in the cup. Says the Bryce, says Rapapa Chiddush, the imitzadeh sadude, if let's say the goy held the cup on a tilt, so then then the wine becomes aser to drink. It doesn't become aser to have a no, but it becomes only aser to drink. Why? Even though there is shich, even though he's stirring it, but I guess he doesn't want he doesn't want it to be he doesn't want uh, but we don't but he didn't he's missing, even though he stirred it because he moved it, but he didn't touch it. That's what we're talking about over here. And therefore, um, according to the first version of Rashi, the reason why it's only usher to drink and not bahana is because in order to make something usher bahana, you have to stick your finger, the guy has to stick his finger and stir it. Here, he's just stirring it without his finger. So therefore, it's only usher to drink and not bahana. Says the Gemara, Amar Papa said, Hi Goy, the Dori Zika. He's holding a flask that is sealed with wine. The Ka'azal Yisrael Achayr, and the Jew is walking behind him. So it's a closed flask full of wine. And the guy is holding it and carrying it. Malya, if the flask was filled up with wine to the top and then got sealed, Shari, the wine is permitted to drink. Why? Because there's no shaking around and the guy didn't touch it. Okay? Because it's sealed, so the guy didn't touch it. And how could you shake it when it's totally filled up to the top? Deloy mekarkish, because it cannot be stirred. Chaseira, but let's say it wasn't filled up to the top, even if it's sealed, even it's sealed, so the guy didn't touch it, right? But it's also to drink that wine. Dilmor mekarkesh. Maybe he's going to stir the wine as he's carrying it, and he's going to stir it for his avodah zarah, whatever it is. They only asked it to drink, but not bahana. Now, that was by uh, a sealed flask. Kuva, but if you have a beaker or a cup, malya, that's full. So then it's an open cup, and the guy is carrying an open cup of wine. Aser, a Jew is not allowed to drink that wine because we are afraid Dilma Noga. Maybe he touched the wine. Maybe he touched it at the top. He didn't stir the wine because maybe he didn't stick his finger into the wine cup, but maybe he touched the top. So therefore, it's also to drink that wine. Chasera, but if it was missing, let's say it wasn't filled up to the top, shari, then a Jew is permitted to drink that wine, even though he's shaking the wine around. He didn't touch it, but he's shaking the wine around. So l'chayra, it should be also to drink. Rashi says that when he's shaking the wine around, he doesn't have intention to shake it because he doesn't want it to shake because it might spill. So it's a shaking, but it's a shaking that he doesn't want to happen. So it's as if he didn't touch and didn't shake, and therefore it's permitted to drink that wine. And of course, the loy nagi for sure didn't touch that wine. Says Rav Ashi disagrees. Rav Ashi says Zika, if it's a closed flask, Bein Malia, if it's full, it's permitted. Ubein Chasera, even if it's not full and it's a closed flask, Shari, it's permitted. My Tama, Ein Derech Nisach B'chach. There's no such a thing of Nisach on a closed flask. Yes, he's shaking it around, and the flask was not full with wine to the top, so he's shaking it around, but it's in a closed flask. You can't even see the wine because it's not a glass flask. It's a earthenware flask. So therefore, it's not nisach. So even though the wine is shaking, he's sure not touching, and that's not called a shaking, and therefore it's permitted. Says the Gemara, another story. Ma'atra Zarah. We learned before that the way we paskin, that even as soon as the grapes are pressed, let's say the goy pressed the grapes, the juice that comes out becomes yayin nesach. That's what we hold. If he stomps it up with his feet or with his hands, we're going to hold that the juice that comes out, the grape juice, right away is yayin nesach. But what happens, ma'atra zarya, he only uses a beam to cause the grapes. So the guy is not even touching the grapes with his hand or his feet. He's just pressing with a beam to squeeze the grapes. Rapapi Shari. Rapapi says those grapes, those juice that come out of the braid is not yayin esech. Ravashi, Vitem Rav Shimi Barashi, Asar. Ravashi says it's Asar. Now, bekoichoi, if the guy is pressing on the beam, and that squashes the grapes, so that's his force. Kuli alma pligi da'asar. That everybody holds that because he's pushing on the beam, so everybody agrees that it's asar, that the juices that come out are asar. Ki pligi, they're arguing bekoyach koichai. It's not the beam. He causes, let's say, he turns a wheel that causes the beam. I have a picture of it over here. You see, if here you have a picture of somebody with a wine press, and you don't see the top, but there's something a wheel that you turn on the top, which causes the beam to come down and crush these grapes and make these juice right over here in this picture. So here you go. Here you have it. So the question was, it's a force, it's a derivative force. So that's the machlokes. Rav Papi says it's permitted, and Rav Ashi says it's aser. The second version says, in the picture I showed you, where the wheel causes the beam to come down. So if the guy, turned the wheel to cause the beam to come down, there's no machlokes. That's permitted. Ki pligi, the argument is bekoiche. If the guy is the one pushing the beam down on the grapes by himself with his own force. So there, if it's his own force, there Papi says it's mutter, Vashi says it's aser. So the Gemara proves that the first way of understanding it is the correct way. There was a case with this wheel, where the guy turned the wheel to cause the beam to come down. The Aser Rav Yaakov from Nahar Poig, Rav Yaakov from that place asered all the grapes, all the juices that come out of the grapes, even though it was koyach koychay. So we see the first version was correct, and Rav Yaakov paskin like Rav Ashi in the first version that asered even bekoyach koychay. Says the Gemara another story. Ahu chavisa. There was this barrel. We go to Samach Chabad Beis. There ipakul orke that split in the length. Okay, there's a split down the length. Idrei ahu guy, the guy came, and what he did was there's no hole there. Chabka, he hugged the barrel of wine so that the wine will not spill out. So here he's not putting his finger stopping an existing hole. He's just pushing the two sides of the barrel together to close the crack. Shadir Rav Rafim Bar Papi B'Tamer Rav Huna B'Rei Rav Yeshua L'Zabuni L'Goyim. He said to drink, that's prohibited. But he allowed you in such a case if the guy hugged the barrel of wine and to close the crack. So then it's not. Maybe he shaked it, but he didn't touch it, and therefore it's only again also to drink, but mutter bahanoah. You can sell the guy. Says the Gemara, the hani mili, that was only said the poker la'arka if the split happened or the crack happened in the length of the barrel. Avala pusya, but if it happened on the width of the barrel, and the guy just is holding the two sides of the barrel together, one hand on the bottom of the barrel, one hand on the top of the barrel, then the Gemara says, "Afila b'shtiya shar." You could even drink that wine, because my time. What's the reason? Ma'aseh lebeina kovet. The guy is not shaking; he's just applying force like a brick on top of it to keep the crack close together, and therefore he's not shaking it, and he's just acting as a brick, as a brick that weighs down as a weight, and therefore the barrel is permitted. Says the Gemara, Hahu guy, there was this guy, the ishtakach v'koi b'matzarta. There was a guy that was found in a Jewish wine press. Now, in the time, again, Mishnah Chroina holds that if a guy squeezed the grapes, he made yayin nesach in the Jewish wine press. Now, it's an old Jewish wine press. So what do you do with that? Now you put yayin nesach in an old Jewish wine press. So how do you kasher it? So Amar Rav Ashi says, "Ika toifech lahatviach." If the juice that came out when the guy pressed the grapes, you see there's juices there. There's juices there that's wet to make other things wet. So it's a normal juice there that if you put your hand on it, your hand will become wet, and then you can make other things wet. So then to kasher that wine press, because that juices was touched by the goy, the yayin nesach, boya hadocha, you need to rinse out the whole wine press, uboya nigov, and you have to clean the wine press by special type of cleaning, which you put ashes, and then you smear ashes on top of the wine press. That was like soap, and then you add water, and then you do ashes again, and then you do soap. So it means a cleansing process. The Eloi, and if the juice that was there when you found the guy there, and you don't even know if the guy made that juice. Maybe that's juice that was from a long time ago when the Yid used it to make his to press grapes. Anyway, so but since the guy was near that juice, he may have touched that juice, and that juice becomes like yayin nesach. But it's if it's just wet to make you wet, but it's not enough wet to once you become wet to make other things wet. So then bahadocha ba'alma sagilay. Then it's enough to um to just rinse down the whole wine press, and it's kosher. Okay. Anyway, the wine press is not going to absorb yayin nesach wine if it's an old Jewish wine press, because in the walls of the Jewish wine press there's kosher wine there, so it's not going to absorb if you put a one-time yayin nesach there. So there's an easy way to just rinse it down and soap it down and clean it, and it's kosher. New Mishnah. Ram Samacham Beis. So the Mishnah we discussed till now of a yayin that's touched by a guy and all that. But now I want to discuss a an issue which is called yichud with a wine. A guy that is right, you're not allowed to be a yichud with a girl, right? So a yichud with a wine. He's alone with the wine. Do you think that the guy did something to the Jewish wine if he was just found alone with the Jewish wine? So it depends. Nachri shenimtza oimid b'tzad habar shal yain. A nachri, a guy walks into a Jewish house without permission and stands right next to the pit of wine that's in the Jewish house. Now, what's the din with the wine? In yesh loy milva olav, if the guy had an outstanding loan that he's trying to collect from the yid, and the yid said that if I don't pay you back, you could come take my wine. So then, usr. That wine is usr. Even if there was a lock on the barrel of wine, right? And there was one lock on the barrel of the wine, since the guy is not afraid to, break the lock and take the wine, um, because he knows that this is the wine that he's going to collect his loan from in case the Jew can't pay. So he's not afraid if the Yid catches him. So therefore, it's usr. Now, the only time it would be mitter if you have two locks there. If you have two locks there, two seals there, then the guy is not going to mess around. He'll wait till the Jew comes. But if there's just one seal, then he'll, since he has a milva on that, since he has a loan on that wine, he's going to break the lock. Ein loy milva olav. If he had no loan on it, he just came into the Jewish house. Mutter, it would be totally mutter, even if there was no seal on the barrel. There was no seal, nothing. Since the guy has no business with the wine, he does not want to be caught, messing around with Jewish wine. He knows that Jews have a special halachas regarding their wine, so, and the guy is not coming to collect a loan. He's just broke into the Jewish house. He just came there, so therefore, then the wine is mutter. The Mishnah says like this: Nafa labar, a guy fell into a pit of wine belonging to a Jew, va'ala, and then they fished him out, right? Or his that's so. What's the doing with the wine? So we're going to learn. Chachamim say the wine is also to drink, but mutter to sell to a guy, and Rav Shimon says the wine is mutter to even drink. Modern bekana. Let's say the guy, he didn't touch the wine, but he tried to measure the wine that's in the pit with a measuring stick. Okay? So he's there touching the wine with something else, but not with the kavana to just stir the wine. His intention is to measure the wine. Or he hit this as a satzira bakana. Or he saw some hornets on top of the wine, so he just, whacked around the on top of the wine so to get rid of the hornets. Or the wine was bubbling up as it was fermenting, and he just wanted to knock the bubbles down so it doesn't heat up, too much. So he's touching the wine with something else, maybe, or even if he's touching it with his hand, but he's not stirring it with the intention of stirring it. So b'chol ha'elu hoyamasev amru. They said, the Chachamim said, what do you do with that story? So yimacher. A Jew shouldn't drink the wine, but you sell the wine to a guy. Rab Shimon says you could sell the wine to a guy. You could actually even drink the wine. So it's not only mutter bahana, but you could actually drink the wine. Now we find like this: Notel as a chavis uzraka b'chamasar. A guy took an empty barrel and he was so angry he threw it into the pit. So what do the chachamim hold? He's actually not touching the wine, but his force threw something into the wine. And the story was they were maksher the wine because the guy is no longer holding the barrel. He just took something, threw it into the Jewish pit full of wine. So then the wine in the Jewish pit is permitted. So the Gemara discusses. Amar Shmuel says, the only time that this wine is permitted is only if the wine is also only if the guy had he was going to collect his loan from that wine. Then the wine is also. Amar Rav Ashi, as we explained, Amar Rav Ashi, Masnis Nami Dek, you could prove it from the Mishnah. The Tanan in the next Mishnah we learn Hamatar Yaini Shal Nachem and Oisim Meshusay Veloy Kaisav Lois Kebalti Mimcha Mois Muta. A guy wants to make kosher wine, right? Because the market, let's say, for kosher wine is more. So he has a Jew working for him. So the Jew finished working for him. He could put the wine in the guy's rishus, and the guy promises he's not going to touch the wine. And he writes that I'm going to consider this as if you paid me for this wine. So mutter, then the Yid could take the wine and sell it to other Yidden, even though he didn't pay for the guy. So the guy promised he's not going to touch the wine. And he wrote as if I accepted money. But if it's another situation happen where the Jew, if he wants to pull the wine out from the guy, the Eimanich and the guy doesn't let him until he actually gives over the money. In Beit Sha'an, and they answered. The only reason why it's aser because the guy doesn't let him take it out. But if the guy would let him take it, and the guy says, I have nothing to do with this wine, then it's permitted. Shmamina, milval oisiyayin be'in shmamina. That the only reason why the wine is aser is when the guy knows that if the Yid is not going to pay him for his loan, he's going to collect this wine. So he's not afraid to break the lock and, do something with the wine. But if he doesn't have a loan on this particular wine, even though he has an outstanding loan, the Yid owes him money, he's still going to be afraid to touch that wine, and therefore it's the wine will be kosher if the guy is found alone with the wine. One last thing. We learned in the Mishnah, Nafal Labar Va'ola. If the guy accidentally fell into the pit of wine belonging to a Jew and then was fished out. So the question is, why is the wine permitted to hana, whatever it is? It should be aser b'hana. Let us be afraid when the guy swims out of the barrel of the pit of wine. He's gonna shake the wine around and causing that the wine should become aser b'hana. Right? He's touching the wine and stirring it. Amar Papa explained, because our Mishnah is talking about they actually found the guy dead in the wine, so he didn't, swim back up. We pulled him out of the wine, so therefore, aval olachai. But if the guy swam out of the pit by himself, aser. My tama. What's the reason? Amar Papa the damale kiyoim edon. That it's similar to a holiday. In other words, the guy realizes that his life was saved. So as he's, swimming out of the pit of wine, he might be moving the wine and thinking that he's, pouring wine for his Avodah Zarah, and therefore, in that case, the wine would be aser b'hana. But our Mishnah is talking about where the guy fell into the wine and died. So when they fished him out, the wine is aser to drink because it was touched by a guy. But since it wasn't stirred by a guy, it's mutter b'hana, and that's why the Chachamim say you can sell it. Okay, we continue tomorrow.